an Australian farm looks like the first half of The Wizard of Oz. I needed to pace myself. I was like a kid in a candy store and I just like gorged myself on all the candy and made myself sick. Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, I am Yvette and I moved to the UK in May last year and it's coming up on a year. I can't wait till spring actually hits and you can stop seeing the same 4 jumpers in every single video I do. I am documenting my experiences in the UK. Since I've been here almost a year, I thought I would do a video on some of the biggest mistakes I have made in that year, just to like even the playing field. Sometimes people think I'm a know-it-all. I don't. Look, you do you. I get told I think I know everything, and this is a video basically dedicated to the fact that I do not know anything, and I never do. So I thought I'd make a video where we can all laugh about the stupidity and mistakes that I have made in my journey to British life. The first thing I didn't really understand, I guess, is the British red tape on everything. Now, I did actually do homework on this. I'm not completely ignorant. So one of the things I struggled with when I first moved was getting a bank account. I couldn't get a bank account without proof of address. I couldn't put a deposit down on any property without a bank account to transfer the money from. First thing I had to do was go to a bank that would take Australian passport or my visa or anything. There aren't any. I read that if you went to Metro Bank, they would do it as long as you had a letter, and I paid a company a lot of money to give me a letter to like vouch for me, and they still rejected it because I was living in a hotel because I had nowhere to live. So then I ended up going to HSBC, no luck there. Then I went to Lloyd's, who said, once again, fill out this massive form, lots of checklists that you have to tick, and then they'll consider giving me a passport, giving me a bank account. However, Daniel's actually a British citizen. He was born in Australia, for those asking, but his mum is English. His mum was born in Carlisle, fun fact. Grew up in Ireland, so he's kind of got a bit of mixture of Irish and English heritage. So he has a passport, so they asked me like, oh, do you have this big list of requirements? And I said, no. Does it help if he has a passport? And then they were like, well, in that case, don't worry about any of that. Here's an account because you have a passport. So to this day, I don't know what I would have done. There is an online account called Monzo. I think that would be my next port of call. Still want to get one actually. It has no international fees. This is not sponsored. But yeah, no international transaction fees, which for the amount of traveling I do would be beneficial. So yeah, you can do an online account, which would have been smarter than running around and wasting like 2 weeks because you need an appointment at all these places. It's just such a hassle. That was just to get the appointment to then get to the flat viewings to then put the deposits down. So it's just like so much like red tape, and I'm actually quite looking forward to enjoying like May this year because last year I moved over in May, which was beautiful weather, lots of flowers, beautiful spring, but I was like so stressed, basically just all over like Rightmove and Zoopla, constantly looking for places to live and doing flat viewings and running around going to appointments, so I didn't really get much time to enjoy it. I'm looking forward to May this year to actually enjoy spring properly. One thing that you have to really take into account, which I kind of did and didn't, is that the pound's strength against the Australian dollar, which the pound is very weak at the moment, but the Australian dollar is just as weak, if not worse. So it's like hard to decide how much money to bring over because you need to bring over, which I actually came over at quite a good time. So I was pretty fortunate because I think it was like, I'm pretty bad at maths, so I can't really do the calculations super well in my head. So I kind of just halve everything and then I'm just pleasantly surprised because it's actually not. It's like more like 90 cents. So if something's £10, I will assume it's $20 when really it's more like $18, $18.50. So I'm always just ahead. So that's how I kind of accounted for it. But it's something that I know a lot of my friends had that mistake of being like, oh yeah, I've got, you know, X amount of dollars, but they forget one, how expensive startup costs are. Like you have to put 6 weeks rent down, you have to put in security deposits, blah, 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 as well as then going for interviews, which cost money and rent and all sorts of things. So you really need a big kitty, and you've got to remember that that kitty gets like halved when you come over because the Australian dollar is not a good currency. Something I did too much of in one of the mistakes I made was one you're going to probably roll your eyes at, is that I traveled too much, which you're like, obviously, clearly I travel too much, travel wall. So basically when in Australia, you get 4 weeks leave a year. A lot of the time they'll make you take 1 to 2 of those over Christmas, so you don't get much. And if you do want to go traveling, it takes basically 2 days to get anywhere and 2 days to get back. So you lose 4 days of your leave just coming and leaving the country because it's so far from everywhere. It takes 5 hours to leave the country. The closest international is like, apart from New Zealand, because it's like the same thing, would be Bali, and that's a 9-hour flight. So holidays happen once a year basically, because when you go, you want to go for the longest time possible and fit everything in. It's probably why you see a lot of Australians who are like, oh, I'm traveling in Europe for 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It's because they just take all their leave in one go, because you have to. When I came to the UK, I realised I could go on weekend trips for an hour flight to all of Europe. I took advantage of that to the point where I burnt out a little bit. So I went to Greece to see my parents because they were going on holiday there and we'd just moved here. So I thought I'll go see them because if you watch my moving videos, go back and watch them. But if you haven't, you'll know that my mum got admitted to emergency room, got admitted to A&E the day I flew out with kidney stones, and she was in hospital when I left the country because she wasn't able to get into surgery. So we didn't have a proper goodbye, which sucked. So I thought I took the opportunity to go see her in Greece and have like a proper... so I did that in July. We went to Wales in June, I think, no, May, because we had put a deposit down on this place, but we weren't able to move in yet. So we thought, like, let's just go for a road trip around Wales. And that was fun, but not relaxing. So I did Wales, I did Greece. My friends happened to be in Europe for their holiday for the year, and so I flew to Prague to see them because I just moved. So I did a weekend in Prague. We also did, we went to Turkey because I wanted to do Turkey. I also went to Spain for Daniel's birthday because Ryanair had flights for £50 return. And then I tried to do Paris for my birthday, and then the Paris riots happened with the yellow vests and the trains, and that was a crazy nightmare. Not a relaxing holiday. And then we did a white Christmas in Finland, Lapland area. Was kind of relaxing, I guess, because I had like 2 hours of daylight, which is interesting. So yeah, so that was quite a lot of travel for 6 months, I would say. And I definitely was getting a bit worn out between like working plus holidays and like, you know, basic life things. I needed to pace myself. I was like a kid in a candy store and I just like gorged myself on all the candy and made myself sick because I'm so spoiled for choice having so much travel around. Whereas like literally in Australia, I did Bali in a weekend once just because I could, because the flights were cheap. It's a 9-hour flight. It shouldn't be a weekend trip. I didn't really consider living anywhere other than London, which is another mistake, only because when you move abroad, you're kind of searching for any semblance of normality, familiarity. You don't really know anything or anyone, so you want to stick with what you do know, even if it is limited. I had been to London twice before, so I knew a fair bit. I'd been here for like maybe a month collectively over my travels because my sister-in-law lives in Scotland, so I come to see her a few times. So London was what was comfortable and what was safe and what I kind of knew, but now we're in this flat with the lease and we are looking at where we'll go next, and I'm looking at still commutable to London because I do love it, but potentially living more in the countryside where there's lots of green space, because I hated the country in Australia. Like, oh, could not get me on a farm, hated it. But I love the farms here, and the difference is they're green here. Google Australian farms for me. Do it. Go. I'll wait. Do it. Pause this video so I don't have to sit here any longer. But come back, Google it, and come back. Do you not think an Australian farm looks like the first half of The Wizard of Oz? Where there's no colour. It's just all black and white, but yellow. That's literally like you leave Sydney, it's that for 24 hours, 36 hours, 72 hours, depends how far you're driving, till you get to Perth, basically. It's just yellow. And then I come to the UK and everything's so lush and green and I love it. I've always loved animals, that's never been the issue. It's just, I guess just the dry, everything's sharp. I just hated it. And I love it here. So I'm more interested in moving to kind of near the green belt of London. just outside, so you Kent, Surrey, Bedfordshire, like I don't know, somewhere like that. Also get a little bit more for your money, which doesn't go astray. And the UK has such good transport links, which I'm not familiar with before I came here. So even if you live like, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 k's outside of London, you can still get in 20 minutes. It's crazy. I lived 30 k's outside the city in Sydney and it took me an hour and a half. And I lived in Sydney, like what would be considered like inside the M25 equivalent of Sydney. Number 5 is that I start to get complacent. So because I got a bit burnt out from traveling, I felt like I couldn't appreciate London as much as I should. Like I've been saying I want to go to the British Museum for weeks, like months even. I haven't been to the British Museum since I moved here, which is so, like I've been before, but I was like, oh, I want to go back because they have a good Egyptian section, and I just went to Egypt. And I thought, oh, we'll go beforehand. And now I'm like, it's free to go to, I just have to go. But when you live somewhere, you become complacent, you know, you watch Netflix in your pajamas on the weekend, you know, you just don't commit the time to doing the touristy things that make the place you live so fantastic. So when you travel to so many other places, like I did, I was so worn out when I got back to London that I couldn't appreciate London, and that sucks. So we're taking it easier this year, but then also there's a thing called Jack's Flight Club, which does like cheap flights, similar to Scott's Flight Club thing. It's just basically deals for flights that you can keep an eye out if you've got a trip coming up. And so Daniel's all about, he's like, do you know we can fly to Poland for like $20? I'm like, no, we've learnt nothing. But yeah, so with the exception of Egypt, January and February have been very quiet in London anyway, just because of the time of year. So hopefully come summer we'll be able to, I'm not actually traveling now. I'm going to have a trip into Ireland, with Ireland and Northern Ireland and Ireland, doing a road trip around that over the Easter weekend. So if you're Irish, please track me down. But other than that, I have no travel booked until July, so that's a good chunk of time to spend in the UK. I do have some UK trips booked, however, which you'll be all very glad to know. I will be planning to go to, I have planned to go to the Cotswolds, and then I'm also planning to do another trip when my parents are here. I'm debating whether to go to York or go to Cornwall. We're definitely going to do like day trips to like Canterbury, Devon, Dorset, those areas. Actually, Dorset's probably a bit far, Devon for sure. But yeah, so let me know any recommendations of places to take my parents, because I want them off my floor. My last point is not a mistake I've made, because if you watch my previous video you'll know all about it, but a lot of my friends have made, which is not trying hard to make friends, because making friends comes naturally when you live somewhere for a long time and you have your group of friends from school, and then you can slowly add as you go, and it's less of a stark contrast compared to when you move somewhere and you have no one and you're like, oh, I guess it'll just happen naturally, but it doesn't really happen naturally unless you put yourself out there. So I know a lot of friends who have moved from Australia who only have friends with people they knew here. So I have a friend in London who I've known since I was 5. She went to school with me, but if I only hung out with her, I would make no British friends, because you're sticking with what's familiar. So you need to really like step outside your comfort zone. Don't just stick with people who are going to be on the same visa as you, because you're going to have probably the same experience you would if you were at home if you don't try a bit extra. You know? And then like, what's the point of being here if it's going to be like when you're at home? So those are some of the mistakes I made when I moved to the UK. Let me know in the comments below if you moved to the UK. Have you made any of these mistakes? Or are you from the UK and you also think banks have too much red tape and it's dumb? Because if you guys have trouble, I have no hope. Remember, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and remember to hit subscribe so I can see you next time. Thanks so much for watching.